I can do something for you that completely lacks deception.
Eating glass, fire, and cigarettes.
Is not a trick in any way.
Sword swallowing. Regurgitation.
It's absolutely real and amazing.
Sorcerers.
And is also really vile and disgusting.
This is very weird magic.
Oh, let's take it all the way. What the hell? Why do people want to see this stuff? I'm not sure they do. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Look at that. Look at that, folks. If you are easily upset by unsettling sights, well, like this.
There is a type of magician who would rather shock than dazzle you. He wants to make you laugh at his absurdity or wonder why would anyone want to do that.
I'm not proud of this at all. What does your son do for a living, Mrs. Mulligan? He's a geek.
Todd Robbins is a specialist in what we're calling weird magic. Robbins breathes fire, swallows swords, and walks in bare feet on broken glass. But his specialty, his raison d'etre, is eating light bulbs.
What I do is sort of almost a rebellion from traditional magic. Magicians look at this and say that what I'm doing is not magic. Now I look at it and say it's the closest thing to real magic you're ever going to see. If you define true magic as the ability to do extraordinary things beyond the capability of the average person, then that's sword swallowing, that's fire eating, that's walking over broken bottles. So basically my act is a magic show without tricks. Tastes like chicken.
Unlike most magicians who follow in the footsteps of Houdini, Blackstone, or Henning, the specialist in this kind of magic finds his roots in the European street fair or North American carnival sideshow.
We've got 11 attractions under that tent. I'd like to call your attention to 2 or 3 particularly.
These sideshows featured fire eaters, regurgitators, sword swallowers, human pincushions, and people who ate seemingly inedible things. Todd Robbins saw this, and his life changed.
Here is a 12-year-old kid seeing this stuff and being hit with the reality that this was all real.
Wanting to learn the secrets, Robbins entered a small magic store and approached a couple of old carnies.
I said, I'd really like to learn how to do those carnival skills. It turns out one of the guys I was talking to had worked in sideshows. And he went, oh, yeah, so you want to learn how to do the dangerous stuff, kid? Oh, okay, I can teach it. Just don't tell your parents. You cannot really learn how to do this. It's sort of like learning how to swing from a trapeze from a book. You can't do it. You have to learn firsthand because there's a great deal of risk to eating glass, to hammering nails in the nose, to fire eating and walking over broken bottles in the bare feet. There's a strong element of risk. The thing I found engaging about the sideshow material is that it looks like a trick, but it's real. Half of what you see in the sideshow is fake, and half of what you see is real. The irony of it is they never make clear which is which. And what is furtherly ironic is that chances are the half that you think is fake is probably real, and the half that you think is real is probably fake.
Sword swallowing is an ideal example.
It takes a great deal to learn how to do sword swallowing because it's dangerous and difficult. It's dangerous because you're shoving 2 feet of steel down your throat. Duh. And it's difficult because whenever you put a foreign object in your throat, you trigger a gag reflex. And the only way to overcome it is by sticking something down your throat every day until the throat relaxes. And then you can put the sword down. And that can take up to a year of daily practice, and it's torture. After you've gone through this, then you have to then work it into an act, and then you have to get the guts to put it on stage in front of people. And after you've gone through this whole ordeal, this odyssey, then and only then you discover that no one really gives a damn about sword swallowing. And I think I know why. Let me just show you. They think it's a trick. They know that there's such things as collapsible swords. I've seen them in movies, I've seen them in cartoons and things like that. And so people think that sword swallowing is a trick. And it doesn't matter what you do. You can take a sword that has no handle in which to fold up into. It's just a bar of steel. You can bang it around, you can show it to people, and yet some people will think it's still a trick. So what you have to do is do whatever you can to show that it's real. So here we go. Never done this sitting down. It's worth a try. Here goes. There's nothing like the taste of steel in the morning. Oh, look, my fever's gone down. So, and the great thing about it is when people realize that what they've just seen is real, when they dismiss their cynical intellect, and it hits them on a much more profound level than just seeing a card trick. For instance, just what you're going through right now.
Like all sword swallowers, Robbins has been injured, scratching his esophagus. Others have died.
There was a guy who took a dipstick from a car and swallowed it, and it punctured right through into his lungs, and there was internal bleeding. And kids, don't try this at home. Wait till you get to school. And and this guy knew what he was doing, and he still ended up, killing himself doing this.
Although difficult and dangerous, sword swallowing is not the highlight of Robbins' show. That honor goes to the eating of light bulbs.
There's no trick to it, but there is a technique behind it. There's a way of chewing up the glass and swallowing it so it doesn't cut up the mouth and throat. And there's a diet and regimen that I go through each and every day that keeps it moving through my system. Just talking about this makes me hungry. Yeah, I'm ravished, I'm starved, I'm in the mood for a light snack. The thing I enjoy most is getting someone who's very full of themselves, who insists after the whole thing that it can't be done. You can't eat glass. I will then, if it's convenient, grab the person and say, okay, come on. And we'll go down to the local market. I'll give them money and say, buy a light bulb. Or if we're sitting somewhere and it's, convenient, I say, now, is that a real light bulb? Is that glass? Okay, unscrew it. And do it right there for them. And it just like a 2x4 right between their eyes. It's great.
Surprisingly, in the hierarchy of sideshow skills, glass eating isn't considered the preeminent special talent.
It's a little bit stale. I guess we'll try something else.
That ranking goes to the regurgitator. Of the physical stunts still practiced today, it's definitely the weirdest. When John Thompson, now world-renowned as the Great Thompsoni, started out as a 12-year-old fire eater and sword swallower, he worked Chicago's Riverview amusement park in the mid-40s, and he worked with the weirdest of regurgitators, Waldo the human ostrich.
He had a Viennese accent on top of everything else. He would say, "My name is Waldo, it's a human ostrich." And he says, "I've been written up 6 times in the Robert L. Ripley column, and I'd like to show you why they call me the human ostrich." And he would have a pie pan, and he would pass this pie pan out, and he would tell everyone to put, if you put a nickel in, he'd give you a nickel at the end of the show. If you put a quarter in, well, most kids would say, "Let's put a nickel in," and then they'd try and get a quarter back at the end. Well, he would get all the money, and then he would take it and down it, just swallow it all, and he'd say, Yeah, this is why they call me the human ostrich. And he opened his mouth and people looking, and there was nothing there, you know. Then he'd say, I'm still hungry. And he would take a couple of bridle rings and he'd clack them together, you know, and he kind of put them in his mouth and they'd kind of stick out the sides like they could pop. And now everybody really, there's nothing in his mouth. He really swallowed these things. He said, I'm still hungry. Maybe I will have some fish. And he would bring out a little fish bowl with a goldfish in it, and he'd catch it in the net, and he'd put it in his mouth and let the tail do this, and then go. Now a woman would pass out, you know, watching this, and nobody wanted to look in his mouth, and they believed him, you know. And he said, I'm still hungry. Now he said, some filet mignon, and he would take a little white mouse, and he'd put it in his, and let the tail hang, and he'd go. Now men would pass out, you know what I'm saying? And finally, he would finish with a dessert, and he'd bring a bowl of lemons, and people would always select the largest lemon, and he'd swallow that. And he kind of counted on him not looking in his mouth anymore, you know, because you could see the lemon way at the back. He had everything in his esophagus lined up, you know. And then he would literally regurgitate everything. Out would come the lemon, out would come the white rat or mouse into the cage, and then the fish into the bowl and swim around, and then the bridle rings, and finally the money. Nobody took a penny. He was always guaranteed that money.
Let's face it, if I did that, animal rights people would be on my case in a second. So I don't. Instead, I use cockroaches. I use about 2-inch cockroaches. And if you put them in the freezer for about 10 minutes, it slows them down to the point of suspended animation, but it doesn't kill them. And it keeps them still long enough so I can put one on my tongue, throw it back, and swallow it down, hold it in the throat, show that it's not there, and then cough it back up again. I gotta get a real job.
Do you mind if I smoke?
Unusual acts such as Tom Mullica's are not new to magic. In the early 19th century, performers like Chabert, the Fire King, would stroll into a blazing inferno and emerge 10 minutes later unscathed. Such unusual attractions were the mainstay of turn-of-the-century dime museums and sideshows. There was, for instance, the three-headed woman, or similar human oddities such as Count Ivan Orloff, the human window pane, a man with eerily transparent skin, or Major Zamora, the celebrated triple-jointed dwarf. By the 1950s, the mainstream popularity of circuses and sideshows had largely disappeared with the emergence of the new medium of television. But all of these elements, oddball stunts, blood, gore, and human freakishness, eventually resurfaced in a unique style of touring show known as the Ghost Show, which usually sold itself in the most gothic manner, borrowing heavily from the horror films of the 1930s. For the price of one ticket, patrons enjoyed an hour-long ghost show alongside a feature film, usually a horror film. One of the most popular performers in this almost forgotten art was magician Ray Mond, one of the best and most garish self-promoters in the business. Raymond began as a medicine show stooge and worked his way up to a full evening show, becoming famous for his very weird blend of magic and horror. Raymond's ghost shows would present tricks that had to be patently fake, like decapitating an innocent member of the audience with a buzzsaw, yet he would play it for real.
It was a 6-foot by 4-foot wide, and it had this big steel blade, and to begin with, we had these boys and girls on the stage, volunteers, and when the griller would come out, they'd all run off stage, but I always grabbed one of the boys or girls and hold them, and we'd throw the black bag over their head, and 2 or 3 of us pick him up, the girl or boy, and put him on the table. The assistant would bring out a glass of green smoking liquid, and as I started to drink it, I would look at the kid out on the stage. Do Do you know what this is? This is the greatest cockeyed concoction that's ever been concocted. It's a green from the mummy, from the old Egyptian tomb. It's mummy juice. You have a mummy?
Raymond would then transform into a crazed mummy character and with the buzzsaw seemingly cut off the volunteer's head.
And the blood would stream down over a big sheet of paper, which the girl's parents were trying to keep from falling on the stage, but more was to show the blood. And then she'd double the paper up and walk off. And I'd jump off the stage with the head in one hand, the machete in the other.
Raymond would tear through the audience with a severed head, and once the audience was at a fevered pitch, he'd hurry back to the safety of the stage, release a pair of terrifying monsters into the crowd, and then suddenly turn out the lights. In the blackness, the audience would imagine they felt snakes writhing at their feet. Luminescent skeletons would suddenly hover above their heads. No one knew where the monsters were, and the result was absolute pandemonium.
Bedlam broke loose. You couldn't hear yourself trying to talk or scream. And it took us trial and error for years. I used to throw a handkerchief to the spotlight man and said, now when I throw the handkerchief, I want the lights to go out. And when you hear the police whistle, bring them back on. We never could hear it. So we ended up using a .38 pistol.
Ghost shows were a cultural phenomenon that came and went in the span of 20 years, from the 30s to the 1950s. Magic and ghostly images have always had a relationship. Magicians in the mid-19th and early 20th centuries often included dark and provocative satanic imagery in their advertising and performances.
Around the turn of the century, it was very popular for stage magicians to have at least one spiritualist piece in the program, usually a spirit cabinet routine or something ghost-oriented. And then by about 1930s, 40s, that kind of faded out.
Subsequently, workaday magicians concentrated on pulling bunny rabbits from hats and were seen mostly at birthday parties or on children's television shows. However, a small faction chose to reject this style of magic, calling themselves bizarrists. Magician and author Eugene Berger believes this has brought mystery back to modern illusion.
The bizarre magicians are trying to make magic powerful again. Bizarre magic began in the 1950s and 60s in England with Tony Shields, and in Scotland with a man named Charles Cameron. And Cameron put it very well. He said what he felt magic needed at the time was a good Gothic revival.
Remaining a largely unknown underground faction until recently, bizarre magicians are finally starting to emerge in greater numbers. They embrace the Gothic writing of H.P. Lovecraft and adopt mysterious alter egos. Bizarrists, who are often shunned by mainstream magicians, hold their own specialized gatherings, sharing their admittedly unusual stories and effects. The group Trinity performs for very small groups of people, conducting an interactive evening called the Cross Creek Graveyard Seance. The seance is based on the dead buried in a small cemetery in the Cross Creek Graveyard in Pennsylvania. Trinity presents a seance in which spirit guides visit through objects belonging to the dead and buried.
And as I reached into my pocket to pull out my watch, it slipped from my cold fingers onto Margaret's grave. Well, I can guarantee you what they're not going to experience is your typical Hollywood late-night movie type of seance, okay? We are giving them as real an experience as their imaginations and their emotions allow them to experience.
What Trinity wants is for their seance to seem eerily real. For them, the seance is a shared voyage into another world, not just a show.
Would you tell us at what time Michelle's soul was touched?
9:30.
9:30? 9:30? Michelle, would you read what the letter has to say?
Dear brother, I'm writing you to tell you that our mother has died of the pox. She died last night about 9:30.
Michelle, what time did she die?
9:30.
At the same time your soul was touched? Anthony, I believe we made a contact. In our performance, in our entertainment, in our theater, we're not looking for people at the end to stand up and cheer and clap. We're looking for stunned silence, nervous laughter. I guess women sweating and men crying are quite acceptable. So that would be a successful seance.
The bizarrists want to share experiences. Similarly, sword swallowers and glass eaters are sharing something equally unusual, but they all stay clear of the occult, believing that it may be pushing limits too far.
What's too far in today's society? Does the bizarre magic go too far? Hard to say. I mean, for some people, sure it is, and for others, it's probably not enough. What worked at the beginning of the century doesn't necessarily work at the end, you know. Things have changed a lot in these 100 years in terms of people's perceptions.
These specialists in weird magic are shocking our sensibilities, provoking us, showing us that so-called realities can be easily twisted and bent. In the end, that is the goal of all magicians.
It makes people wonder, you know, how is it possible? And that's important because when people start to wonder, they start to think. So that's why I do this kind of stuff, so that if people are amazed by any of the things I do, then my job is done and theirs is just beginning.
There's nothing like a good cigar.
Don't you hate it when you get a piece of glass stuck in your teeth? I hate that.
It's okay, I'll floss with the filament. Much better. Oh, by the way, in case you're wondering, I'm not going to eat this part. The reason is because I'm flying down south to do some colleges tomorrow. And if I eat this now, it'll still be in my system when I go through the metal detector at the airport. And if you were working security, would you believe my story? No. I can practically hear the snap of the latex gloves as they prepare for the full body cavity search, so I'm not going to eat the metal part. But the glass, yeah, here it goes. All gone. Go around, please hold it apart and get it all done. Right. I've got to get a real job. Now. Oh, boy. Yeah, I really shouldn't be doing this, but my doctor said I needed more roughage.